Okay, welcome back to Taco Bowler Gaming. My name is Taco Bowler, and we have a special uh, series that's beginning, which is the second half of my tutorial series. So the first half of the tutorial series took place in 1.29.3, and it went through the basics of the mechanics of the game. And that was something that I wanted when I was learning the game, was to just tell me the basics, tell me what's going on in a kind of separated out thing. This is going to take place in 1.30, and it's currently 1.30.2, I think. They're working out a few of the kinks in the new Emperor update, and so I'm going to be going through, in this one, playing as one country and doing my best to think out loud, to try and explain every single thing I'm doing. I know there'll be mistakes that happen along the way, but I'm just going to try and think through every single thing that I'm doing and explain what I'm doing, explain why I am doing it, and hopefully that can get the kind of thought process that is needed to play Europa Universalis 4 into people's minds. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing one of the two nations that I suggested that you start with. In fact, this is the nation I suggest you start with, period, which is the nation of Castile. The other option would be the Ottomans. I do suggest that your first two games be Castile and Ottomans in some order. So we're going to play as Castile, and I'm going to get through creating a couple of colonial nations. So it'll probably be through 1520-ish. Create a couple of colonial nations in the Caribbean, in Mexico, in that area, so that you have a firm foundation and idea for what's going on with that. So you can take a look at this. We do have activated the three DLCs that I said were essential: Art of War, Rights of Man, and Common Sense. This case is to be made for Dharma, but I am not going to do that. Also, there's a case to be made for Golden Century for Castile. Aragon, Portugal, but if you're going to play any other countries after that, it's not really that essential. So I wouldn't recommend getting it for one run unless you really wanted to. But this is the lead-in to Castile. And so you can read a little bit about this. The crown of Castile is, in fact, not just one kingdom, but a union of the kingdoms of Castile, Leon, Toledo, Galicia, Murcia, Jaén, Cordoba, and Seville, under the Castilian branch of the Trasmara dynasty. What remains of the Moorish presence in Iberia is now restricted to Granada. Surrounded by all sides by Castilian castles, it seems to be a matter of time before the Reconquista is brought to its logical conclusion and the kingdom is annexed. For now, however, Castile has problems of its own. The nobles and local courts of the various constituent kingdoms still hold a large degree of power, and many Trasmerta kings have found themselves at the mercy of the estates of their kingdoms. Factions acting entirely in their own interests have not shied away from supporting foreign pretenders from Portugal and Aragon in the past. The kingdom can be united by a strong ruler, and the Reconquista completed, Castile will have a fearsome military force in its hands with a long tradition of fighting for the expansion of the Christian faith. While Castile lacks the seafaring tradition of neighboring Portugal, they have just as good access to the Atlantic Ocean and new trade routes that are opening up to the west and southeast. So that's good. We are Catholic, as you can kind of tell what that does. And then we have a monarchy, and we are a kingdom rank for what that's worth. So now, the first thing that I suggested to do, one of the first things to do in any Europa Universalis 4 game, is to think ahead. What am I trying to do? What are my goals, and how can I best achieve that? So for instance, I'm playing Castile. My goal is to take over certainly Arabia. Yeah, we're going to take over Arabia over here. No, we're going to take over Iberia for sure. And then Aragon with the personal union, and maybe even Naples eventually. we're going to take over all of that, and then my goal would be to create a very large colonial network over here. So in order to do that, I need to get over here as quickly as possible, preferably being the first nation over here, and then kind of solidify things. So one thing I might do as Castile, I want to control the Sevilla trade node. So I know I need to get these 4 provinces from Morocco and this one from Portugal. So I want to make sure that happens. And then I want to control Portugal. If you are playing as Castile, you also do have this island. That's worth remembering. It's very, very good for colonial range in the future. We know we're going to have to take over Granada. Aragon, we know we have the Iberian Wedding event as a possibility coming up. We also know that England is going to be a threat to our colonial adventures, but if we can get rid of Portugal and keep England from growing too quickly, we can be virtually unopposed in the New World. That would be very, very good for us. So I think that my general thinking is that I'm going to focus here, trying to get that. I'm going to try and get the rest of the Sevilla node. I don't really care about the Safi node, but I'm going to try and get the rest of the Sevilla node. And then I'm going to wait for Aragon for the Iberian Wedding event, and I will get Aragon under PU. Hopefully Naples at that point will also be under PU. At that, up until that point, however I can grow. I recommend investigating, researching your country before you really start a game, at least looking a little bit into what might be happening. So for Castile, you now know, oh, the Iberian Wedding's coming up. I don't really have to attack Aragon because I'm going to get that land for free, most likely, 95% of the time. But I also know that the surrender of Maine will happen. I know because I've researched, or I know just because, but I know because I've researched that there's a Castilian civil war. And so if we ever have a regency council, have a female heir with a weak claim, or an heir whose claim is weaker than 80, I could be facing the Castilian Civil War. I could be facing some problems there, right? So I kind of have that in the back of my head if that ever comes about. Because one of the things that typically you do, if you do look up Castile, people are going to suggest you disinherit Enrique. And I also would suggest that. He is terrible. Not only is he infertile, with a minus 25 chance of heir if he ever gets to the throne, but 0, 0, 0. But that's going to start the Castilian Civil War. So that's all things you have to keep in mind, right? So that's all kind of what I'm thinking there. I do know that we will definitely want to take over Granada because that's going to be a mission. Talked about it in the thing. So let's take a look at our missions. We want to discover the Caribbean. The province of Bani has to have been discovered by Castile. If it does, I get global settler increase for 15 years. So I may not want to actually do that until I've got a colonist ready to go there. Build a force limit will give us morale of armies. That's nice. That's normal stuff. Trust for the allies, high income. Okay, so this is all the normal stuff of a normal tree. So the other thing to do is manpower level at least 60%, and army size 100% of the force limit, and navy size 100% of the force limit. And it gives me morale of armies, morale of navies, and a claim on all of the upper Andalusia area. So one of the things I don't think I ever did explain is if you go over here to the graphical map modes, we have political map modes, diplomatic map modes, economic map modes, and geographical map modes. This gives me a permanent claim on the upper Andalusia area. So you can look over here, area. So I know that this is Upper Andalusia, which is Granada. This is Lower Andalusia. And then we have the area of Toledo, right? The area of Extremadura, I think. And then we have, regions, the region of Iberia. There are some achievements that involve the region of Iberia. Keep noting that these islands are in the region of Iberia. And then we can do subcontinents, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Levant, things like that. So, just something to remember there. So right now I am sitting here thinking, okay, I know I want to build the force limit because I want that possibility. I want that achievement, and I want to or mission, and I just want to get it over with so I can get down to these missions, which are a lot, very, very good stuff. This gives free development, for instance. But I want to do it by also having 100% of naval force limit and having manpower of at least 60%. So I want to get both of these done before I really go to war. I also am thinking ahead. I know that I'm going to need to get to be colonial power first, which means going to need exploration ideas as soon as I can. Excuse me. So I'm going to actually remove this focus. And right now I'm trying to decide, do I focus admin or do I just not focus anything? In other words, do I go for 5 administrative, 3 diplo, and it would be, I'd lose 3, so it'd be 4 military. Or do I go for no focus, and that would be 4, 4, and 5. And honestly, I think that just having no focus is probably going to be better because you are going to still need military technology relatively quickly, and building up the diplo at the same time wouldn't hurt. So we're going to go ahead and just do no focus by clicking what I had focused. That just removes all focuses, and it's essentially a focus on nothing. And so you still are not unable to change that for 20 years. Again, this is a DLC mechanic, as in disinheriting. We are going to go ahead and disinherit Enrique because he is terrible. It's always a good move, even with the hit of minus 50 prestige. I know that's going to put me at minus 42, but it likes to get back to 0. So if I'm at minus 42, I'm not going to war for a while. It should be okay. So we're going to do that. Now, I do have a personal union on Monarch Death. Ooh, that's interesting. I would fall under a personal union with Aragon. That would be the opposite of good. But I could get out of that if I really, really needed to. Let's set rivals. Let's see. Does France actually have me as a rival? They do. Okay, well that changes that. England does. Aragon does not. So I do think that we'll go ahead and do Morocco for sure. And then let's do let's see. Recover Portugal. Alright, so I'm going to get claims on that. Just claims. So yeah, let's do Portugal. Let's wait and see what Aragon decides to do, because it looks like I can I can get an alliance with Aragon, because they did not rival me, which is unusual, but I like that. So I'm going to actually offer an alliance to Aragon on this first day. And even though I'm getting this, I have until the end of the month before I face any penalties for having too few rivals. And really the only penalty for having too few rivals is to power projection, which don't worry too much about that anyway. We will go ahead and insult Morocco, though. Get a little bit of power projection. Always a good thing. And then I'm going to wait and see what Aragon does in relation to France and England and Portugal. And then my remaining two rivals, I would like them to be Portugal and England because they're allied to each other already. But if Aragon allies, say, Portugal, then I don't want to make them upset. And then let's go ahead and just build. Let's see. I need 9 to get here. One thing I could do, in order to get to force limit while maintaining my manpower, is I could build mercenaries. I can't afford to buy them, though. I'm thinking that men, and the land units take a shorter time to build than the sea. So I'm going to actually build trade ships up. I only need 3 of them. That's going to take all my gold. But I think that that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to build the trade ships because they take 300 some odd days. And I need to get up to that amount anyway. And we're going to protect trade in our home node. We're going to collect in our home node. Now this is new. I think that Safi, yes, it's bringing a ducat. Oh, well, this isn't going... Tunis is splitting up, and so I'm going to actually move from Tunis because we would lose 0.4. Portugal's trying to bring it over anyway, versus losing 1. So I'm going to give up my merchant in Tunis in order to collect in Sofia. I think that's going to increase my trade the most. And then I'm going to, let's see, my current army tradition is already going down, so I'm going to mothball my forts for money in order to get my army composition as high up to force limit as fast as I can. I will do that. Now a couple of other things quickly before we move on a day. This button here used to be when you went to war, you had an opportunity to raise war taxes 1 time, and that would cost you 50 base military power. Now, this is a toggleable button. So I can toggle it on, I can toggle it off. And what it does when you have it toggled on, I think I booked it. Okay, so when you have it toggled on, the little check mark is there. Then as soon as you declare war, it automatically turns on. And now it will cost you 2 per month. Until you are no longer at war, and then it will go away. So you can kind of set it and forget about it. I think it's worth the 2 per month, unless you're, at least until for the early parts of the game, when you're rolling in money, which Castile will be, then maybe you're fine. I am looking at the inflation going up, and that's going to need to be adjusted. I do think it's worth taking advisors, so as soon as I get some money, I may go ahead and actually click the advisors before I train men. We'll see. The last thing to look at is the new Estates tab. I don't think anything else really changed that much, but the Estates tab is here. So we have this thing called Crown Land, and it's split up between me, the white here on this pie chart, and then the burghers, the clergy, and the nobility. Now in my tutorial, I believe that I said don't worry about estates. You have to worry about estates now, at least a little bit. And so we have this here. The benefits are the same. I think clergy has been nerfed a little bit. If they're happy, Clergy give taxes, burghers give trade, nobility give manpower. If they're angry, your men cost more and manpower speed is reduced. If the clergy are angry, taxes go down. I think stability cost goes up. And of course, burghers, the trade efficiency goes down, production goes down. But Crown Land also, if you have less than 30% of Crown Land in your territory, then you get a little bit of a punishment here. Liberty desire from subjects, maximum absolutism goes down. That's not too bad. The only thing that actually impacts me right now is national tax modifier, and we're very, very close to 30% anyway. And then if you're over, I want to say if you're over 50%, you start getting bonuses to these things, to tax modifier, absolutism, liberty desire, etc. And then if you're over 75%, you get really, really good bonuses. What you can do, if you sell titles, all the estates will gain loyalty, but you lose 10% of your crown land. If you siege land, then all of your estates lose 20%, 20 loyalty. And if they fall below 30, that's when you start getting penalties related to it. And if you siege land to get them below 30, then rebels will rise up on your capital. That would increase your crown land by 5%. And those two are affecting that. And then there's this middle one is called Summon the Diet, or Summon the Diet. And then that's a button that you want to click often. I won't say as often as you can, but often. I wish it would really come up with a good, hey, you can summon a diet. And then you have privileges that each estate can do. So you have, these things here. Each estate is different in what they can do. Each of them does have a monthly power, but you lose 10 crown land with each one of those you activate. But it's something to remember. Each one of them also has governing capacity. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we have, some of this stuff here. Personally, there hasn't been a kind of coalescing in the community around a certain concept or idea for that. But personally, let's see, it doesn't actually look like I have it here. This is interesting. So the one that I would normally go for isn't here. Very interesting. Okay then. So I would, at that point, I would say to look for what ones would go here. Now, if you hover over the loyalty, you can see the equilibrium of each estate. And so you can see here the equilibrium for nobility is at 43.30, and you can see why it is there and why it's not. And then you can see clergy's at 35, burghers are at 30.08. So this is important to note. If I take this, the burghers' loyalty would change by -5, but also their equilibrium changes, and I think that's actually what changes. So if their loyalty equilibrium is currently at 30.08, and I reduce it by 5, then that's below 30. And the equilibrium is where it drifts, so where it wants to get to. So for instance, the prestige wanted to get to 0. That's its equilibrium. So right now, all of these will go down every monthly tick. So I don't want to do the diplomatic power, even though that's the one I really would want, just because I would have to do something else to get that loyalty, that equilibrium back up. Like say, free enterprise or something, you know, along those lines. And you do want to watch this because you don't want to lower your maximum absolutism by too much, just simply because when it gets to the age of absolutism, you're going to want to have absolutism. So you want to watch that a little bit, but that's, you know, what it is there. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to I think I'm trying to decide. I think I am not going to do anything that actually costs this, costs Crown Land, even though I would love to have the power at the moment. I'm going to do things that actually increase the equilibrium of at least the burghers. So we could, well, where am I on governing? Let's talk about governing capacity. So this is a new thing for the states. So all of your states count a certain amount to this, and then your territories cost less. Your trade company territories cost less than states. I don't know the exact percentages, but this is based on your development in there. So right now we are currently governing 226 out of a maximum of 400. You can get more of it by, well, passing the land rights. You get more of it through technology. Governing capacity there, you can see it goes up by 100 at level 8, 100 at level 12, 250 at each of those. So you get a little bit more there. You can get some from ideas, such as, there's economic expansion ideas, has minimum autonomy and territory. Governing capacity plus 25% for administrative ideas, things like that. So I don't think I need governing capacity. I think I'm going to actually... Oh, I said burgers, didn't I? What I'm thinking here, if you go over to the equilibrium, it is affected by their land ownership, by naval tradition, and mercantilism. Okay. So it's not affected by their influence. Okay. I was thinking that maybe increasing their influence with this one would be a good idea. I think that I'm going to go ahead and just do this one here. It's going to let me hire a Diplo advisor, which I will really want to do during the time I'm going for exploration ideas. It's going to increase the burger loyalty by 5, and it increases the stability cost, but I won't use that too much. So that should be okay. We're going to give them that privilege. And now their equilibrium is at 35, which I'm a lot more comfortable with than 30. And then I'm going to siege land. and they will all drop to 30. So now their equilibrium is higher than they are. So each of them will now gain, and that is a resource. Everything in the game is a resource. You want to be using as much as you can on that. And then I'm going to summon the die. We will end the episode here by talking about the agenda of the die, or the diet. I usually call it a die, some call it a diet. I don't know what the correct one is. But basically, the estates summon a diet, and favoring one of the estates could have a large benefits in the long term. So we have, 20 years to fulfill whatever it is that they want. So I can develop Soria. Usually these developed ones are just developing at 2. I can use admin to develop 2 in Soria, and clergy would like that. I would gain 10 prestige. I am low on prestige. That's something to think about. The nobility want manpower to be at least at 90%, and then they would gain 10 loyalty, and I would gain a level 2 advisor who's 50% cheaper to employ. And the burghers want me to develop Cantabria using Diplo power, and they would give me money to do so, 86.49 ducats. I am thinking that I already have to do manpower for the mission, but I only need 60% manpower for that. I don't need to be at 90%, and I don't like being at 90% because, again, that's a resource. I don't want to put myself at the maximum and then essentially lose that 252 men each month. So I'm going to actually go with the burghers. I think that money is more important than prestige, even with that. So we're going to go with the burghers. And then if you go over here to the estates, I have until, down there at the bottom, 1464. So I have 20 years to get that done. So I need to remember that, but I don't have to do it immediately. And then that's where we are. We haven't even moved a day, but I have been Talkable Gaming, and I hope you will enjoy this series. If you're learning the game, I hope it will be good for you. But I have been Talkable Gaming, and I will see you next time.